Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone, and good morning, everyone. Today, as we enter into the second day of our Q&A session, and in today's Q&A session, we'll be discussing about the second precept, which is called by Adinadana, not stealing. There's a better translation which goes by not taking what's not given, because that includes everything. So let's get into the questions that I have today, and you can also post your questions in the comment section here, so I can read your questions that are related to not stealing or not what's not given. So Adinadana, precept, any questions regarding stealing, not stealing, what's not given, what's given, and all those aspects of precept, you can comment under. You can ask questions in the comments. First question: what are the elements of stealing? That means what are the elements of what's not given? So in order for someone to break the second precept, which is called by Adinadana, there should that person should complete 5 elements. So without having completed those 5 elements, that person does not break the second precept. We did the same thing. We talked about the same thing last Monday in regard to Anatipata. Just because a being dies, one does not break the first precept. So there should have 5 elements of killing. Not killing precept. Killing precept must be executed, fulfilled in order to break the precept. So in the same way, when it comes to Adinadana, not stealing, precept, there should have 5 elements that one should complete in order to break the second precept. The first element, the object has an owner. Let's say you steal an object, be that something that you desire or something desirable in society, and you understand that the particular object is belong to someone. Second, you perceive that the object has an owner. So the first thing is the object should be the object should be a possession of somebody. The second is that you perceive, you understand that this belongs to someone. So those 2 things. Third element is you intend to steal it. So you have intentions to steal this item or object. And then you are strategizing, you are planning, which you call by making efforts to steal it. Finally, you succeed in stealing it. So let me read again those 5 elements, so you would understand how someone breaks the second precept. The object should have an owner, but you are still not conscious about whether there's an owner or not, but the object should have an owner. Number 2 element is you perceive, you understand that this is belong to somebody. Third element, you have intentions to steal. Number 4, you are planning, you are strategizing, planning to steal, and then you succeed in stealing. So by fulfilling these 5 elements only, you are breaking the precept. So if there are no 5 elements, incompleteness, there is no breaking the second precept. So I mean, this is very interesting, right? But there are some exceptions that we will be talking during our Q&A session. That's number 1. Question: But in addition to like these 5 elements of stealing are mentioned in the Vinaya, in the Parajika section of the Vinaya. But if you take a look at of Attasalini, which is a part of Abhidhamma, we can see that they also talk about 5 elements whereby someone breaks the second precept. The first element, an article or an object belonging to another legally and blamelessly. Now, this is a question somebody might ask. What if the object was earned by that particular person who says that this has belonged to me in bad ways, in wrong ways, right? So the first element is an article, an item belonging to another legally and blamelessly. Number 2, knowledge that the article or object belongs to another. Same thing. Number 3, there must be the intention, the same thing. Number 4, action must be taken, that means planning, strategizing. Number 5, by the action, the article must be taken. So let's take the Vinaya way of finding 5 elements so that somebody breaks the second precept. Number 1 is the object has an owner. Number 2, element 2 is you perceive, you know that the object has an owner. Number 3, you have intentions to steal it. Number 4, you make effort, you are planning, strategizing, and then you succeed in stealing that particular item or object. So that's how you're gonna break the precept. If you are not completing the whole set, we can say this is completely a stealing, or you break the second precept. But keep in mind, even though you are not breaking, depending on how long you go, among the elements, let's say you start, you're gonna make first 2 or 3, still you are making bad karma, but it might not be the whole adinadana, but you may have different vipakas, repercussions. But in order to break the second precept, you must complete this one. Somebody asked a question: should the word steal be always replaced with taking or using what's not given? That's a good question. Now, we always talk about not stealing. There's a better word saying, you should not take what's not given. I mean, that's an interesting way of saying the stealing part. I mean, which is more clarified, elaborated, right? And also, we have to understand that the opposite side of the good side of the second precept is generosity. So we have to promote generosity by ways of what may I not take, what may I give, right? Instead of thinking what may I not take, we should think what may I give. So in that way, you are trying to practice generosity instead of thinking, stealing or what's not given, right? So that's what we are, promoting at this point. Is hoarding or stockpiling during the COVID-19 time a stealing or breaking the second precept? Yes, because you go into the shops and then you buy everything you want, everything more than the quantities, and you are not thinking about other people, other buyers, other people who are doing groceries. So that it's a way of stealing, although you are purchasing, because sometimes they may have to wait and they may come after you, so the shelves are empty, so they can buy, right? So you have to buy as per what you really want, rather than you buy simply because you have money. You should not buy and stockpile or hoard. It happened even in many countries, even in here. Okay. So basically, what we have to understand is we have to think beyond the literal meaning of the precept. Now, a lot of people, they take only the literal meaning. Okay, I'm not stealing, that's it. No, that shouldn't be the way that you should think about the precept. Precepts have a literal meaning. not killing, not stealing, not misbehaving, not lying, not taking intoxicants or food and beverages, so that you are not in the right mindset. So there is a literal meaning, but in order to practice the real ethics, virtues, you should go beyond the literal meaning of the precepts. So that's where we find out hoarding and stockpiling. So we should not ignore other people when it comes to shopping and other things too. What is the connection of giving consent to the second precept? It's a very good question. Nowadays, we always talk about it, giving consent. Now, when you talk about medical things, they always ask you to sign, right, consent. When even among the relationships, I think the man and the woman, the partners, they should have the consent. They should not use extra force, right? So kind of asking consent. Otherwise, you are kind of like misusing the other person. So always asking, are you okay with this? Do you want to go with this one? So like consent. If you don't ask the consent, you're just trying to push what you want. That is a form of stealing. But you might not break the whole thing, but form of stealing. So there's a huge connection between getting consent or asking consent and getting consent with the second precept called adinadana, not stealing. Where does the second precept fall in the Noble Eightfold Path? Okay, good question. Now, if you take a look at the Noble Eightfold Path, there are 8 components: Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi, right? If you can take a look at Samma, Ditti, Sankappa, Vacha, Kammanta. Under Samma Kammanta, right action, you can see there are 3 right actions: not killing, not taking what's not given, and not misbehaving. So that means, keeping away from, or I would say not stealing, not taking what's not given, is a part of fulfilling the Noble Eightfold Path. So if you are not following, the precepts, you won't be able to progress in the Eightfold Noble Path. So that's a very good place. So it is highly connected. It's hugely, immensely connected to the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, another question. Does Metta Sutta talk about teachings related to the second precept, not stealing? Does Metta Sutta talk about teachings related to the second precept, not stealing? Yes. If you can take a look at, I gave a talk, yesterday, about 15 skillful habits that are reflected in the Karaniya Metta Sutta. These are skillful habits. I call them skillful habits. This is the first time. Many might know this term, because I'm kind of saying they are skillful habits. Not that the Pali word itself says that they are skillful habits, but looking at the bigger picture of how those 15 qualities, I would say skillful habits, prepare oneself for practicing 10 kusala. So under the list of skillful habits, you can see Uju Suju. Uju is moral uprightness, but Suju is honesty. So honesty is a big part of not swindling, not cheating, right? It's always like the second precept and the fourth precept, they are always interconnected, right? So you are honest. So the Metta Sutta definitely exclusively talks about the stealing, not stealing concept by ways of Uju and Suju, moral uprightness, and honesty, right? Shouldn't be crooked people. Because when you are not honest, you may take what's not given. If you are honest, you don't need to. You don't have to, right? The next question is very interesting. Does being late mean stealing some other person's time? Yes. Now you are making appointments. I'm going to come at this time. but you are sometimes late. Sometimes you are too early, which are too bad. You know what I mean? If you go somewhere too early, which means, if you are not getting into that person's prior activities of the appointment, then it should be okay. But there are people who come early and trying to get into the place and trying to disturb the person, which is pretty bad. You shouldn't do that. But there are a lot of people who go late. That means somebody is expecting you, but you are taking his or her time, which is perfectly stealing. Because that time was your time and you are not taking it. You are taking his time, the precious time that he could have done something else. So don't do that. So it's a form of stealing. So don't steal other people's time. If you have an appointment, go right a few minutes before the appointment, so that you are not taking his or her time. So don't go too late, don't go too early. So they are pretty bad ends, extreme ends of appointments, right? So it's connected to stealing time. Don't steal other people's time. This is also an interesting question. Does browsing Dhamma or social media during the time they are supposed to be working a kind of stealing? Yes. You know why? Because they are paying you a remuneration for your work, right? So the employees, they are given a lot of time for their work based on a contract. So if you are not giving your time and your dedication, effort, as agreed, it can definitely be a stealing. So when you are working, don't check your phones, don't check your Facebook, don't check your social media profiles, right? Because you are paid for that. I mean, if we talk about beyond the literal meaning of stealing, you can understand these are really forms of stealing. If you are paid, just work for that. Even you try to read Dhamma during the time, because that might not be a good thing, because you are paid for that time to work for somebody, right? I mean, you can perhaps practice mindfulness, do your work rather than try to browse things, right, with a phone. So does browsing Dhamma or social media during the time they are supposed to be working kind of? Yes, it is a kind of stealing, because you are paid on a contract. You are paid for all the time, so you should not steal that person's time, because you are paid for that. Does illegal downloading violate the second precept? A good question. Illegal downloading, yes, because you are downloading illegally. That's also, nowadays we always do things online, right? So we have to be very careful. There are things like intellectual rights, right? So we should not download stuff illegally, because it can definitely come in the form of violating the second precept. We should always try to find authentic, real, legal sources to download your everything. That is better than being greedy for your money, right? Because a lot of people, they are greedy about money. That's why they tend to do these things. So you have to find out legal channels to download files and everything. Why is sniffing a flower considered to be stealing? Now, this is a story. I would tell you a very good story that we can see in the Samyutta Nikaya 9th section 14th sutta. This clearly says, in this sutta, this clearly says keeping precepts is not just focusing on the literal perspective of the precept. It is much more than the literal understanding of the precept. Let me tell you the story. Now, actually, sniffing a flower can be considered to be a form of stealing. That's what we can see in the story. Now, the sutta, SN 9, Samyutta Nikaya 9.14 goes by Gandatena or Paduma Puppa Sutta. What happens is, in this sutta, there is a certain monk who was dwelling among the Kosalans. in a forest thicket. One day after his meal, returning from his alms round Pindapata, he went down to a lotus pond and sniffed a red lotus. Then the Devata, deity, inhabiting the forest thicket, feeling sympathy for the monk, desiring his benefit, desiring to bring him to senses, approach him and address him with this verse. So a Devata, a deity, so the monk was sniffing a red lotus, somewhere. So he wanted to tell the monk that this is a form of stealing. Now you might be perhaps puzzled about this. How come you're gonna go, into a forest or a park? You're just gonna sniff. How come it can be sort of, stealing? Let's take a look at the sutta. Now the Devata says to the monk, "You sniff this water-borne flower. This has not been given to you. This, dear Venerable, is a factor of stealing." So the Devata says to the monk, this is a form of stealing. You are a thief of a scent. You are a thief of a scent, which is pretty interesting. So the Devata says to the monk, you are a thief of the scent, smell, right? The monk says, I don't damage. I sniff at the lotus from far away. So why do you call me a thief of scent? One who digs up the stalks, damages flowers, one of such ruthless behavior, why don't you say it of him? So the monk assumes that you should call someone a thief, someone who has damaged the flower, who has damaged the tree. And the deity says, a person ruthless and grasping, smeared like a nursing diaper to him, I have nothing to say, it's you to whom I should speak, to a person unblemished, constantly searching for purity. A hair tip's worth of evil seems as large as a cloud. Now, Dhamma folks, this is very interesting. Because the Devata, deity says to the monk, you are a monk, especially you are a very pure monk. You are an unblemished monk. For a monk like you, who is very unblemished with your sila, this is a form of stealing. Because you are very unblemished. Now for a normal person, this might be a normal thing. Even the Devata might not approach. Because Devata knows, the deity knows, the monk is very pure in sila. So he has to tell the monk, this is a form of stealing. And then he says, a hair tips of worth of evil seems as large as a cloud. Even a small evil thing for a very pure person is just as as large as a cloud, right? So people who are very pure, who are very unblemished, who are very impeccable, should be very concerned about even a slighter version of stealing, right? Now people like you, lay people, you might not be able to do this to this extent, but if you are really concerned about stealing, you have to go into bigger versions, expanded, higher versions of stealing. That's why the deity told the monk, you know what, for someone like you are very unblemished, you are very pure, so that sniffing a flower is a form of stealing, right? And you know what the monk told the deity? Yes, deity, you understand me and show me compassion. Warn me again, Devata, whenever again you see something like this. So the monk understood this was a form of stealing. He felt to himself. Then the monk said to the Devata, please warn me again. Next time if I go somewhere, if I do the same thing, please warn me. See how humble is the monk. How flexible, how soft, how opened up is the monk here, right? So that's the way how the monk said to the Devata, please guide me next time if I do a similar thing. And the deity told the monk, I don't depend on you for my living, nor am I your hired hand, you monk. You yourself should know how to go to the good destination. The monk, chastened by the Devata, came to his senses. So the deity said, it's not my duty to always warn you, but you should understand this is a form of stealing, right? So it's a very interesting point. So that's why even a sniffing of flower can be considered as a form of stealing. So because that pond is not belong to a monk, it's a public one. So basically what I understand is keeping precepts, especially particularly in today's topic, we're talking about not stealing. We should not stop at the literal fulfillment of the precept, including this precept. Now, the literal fulfillment is not taking what's not given, but we should take it all the way to perfection, paramita, and ensure that in our mind that there is not even a trace of egoistic, indulging intent of touching other people's stuff, putting our fingers, into other people's stuff. So that is the purpose, not just, stick to what you call the literal fulfillment of the precept. We should go beyond the literal fulfillment of any precept. So this level of perfectionism in terms of any precept may be excessive for lay people like you, but for professional practitioners like monks, monastics who are always trying to work around the purification, this can be a kind of an impediment. So they have to overcome even that slight amount of stealing. Okay. What's the other question? Is it fully intent, karma, intent? So if you don't engage in the intent of stealing, you will not experience the results. Okay. However, what if you are someone who considers smelling the flowers of another individual stealing? Surely that would not be considered stealing. Yet to that person, smelling the flowers would trigger the intent. I mean, this is perhaps related to the monk who did that in the previous question. Even though that coarse mental intent would arise, as far as I know, that is not actual stealing. So the non-intent stealing would not have an object. At which point can you say you are actually stealing, and at which you are not? So in my understanding, one has to fulfill all the 5 elements of stealing. That is how a stealing can happen, right? So if you're asking me the stage, and if you're asking me how actually stealing arises, emerges, one has to understand those 5 elements of stealing. Only by executing 5 elements themselves, one will break the second precept called adinadana. For our modern daily situations, a really subtle understanding of the precepts is required. So where is the subtle line of stealing? A good question. Where is the subtle line of stealing? Subtle line of stealing is the thought that you wanted to, take something that's not given to you. So that thought, we're going to be looking at that thought at the end. How does that thought form? Consciously or intentionally or unintentionally, right? So that is the subtle line. Okay, what is the best way of keeping the second precept? I think we will be discussing that at the end. Okay, this is an interesting question as well. There was a crumpled up dollar bill on the stairs when I was coming out of work today. I looked around and didn't see anyone who might have dropped it. I picked it up and walked away. Pretty soon I went back and laid it back on the steps again. I realized I really didn't know how the second precept, I undertake the training rule to abstain from taking what's not given, should be applied to found items which don't have an apparent owner. Now, Dhamma folks, you understand somebody dropped, a dollar bill, I guess, and then somebody took that, and then, and he's asking a couple other examples as well. There are lots of examples wild berries in the woods, wild flowers in a vacant lot, something interesting that washes up on the shore, something that's being left on the side of the road, money lying on the ground with no one anywhere around, an apparently abandoned item in a desolate area. I hadn't really thought about this before, but as I was walking away with that dollar, I actually felt kind of guilty. So I would like to know, found items should be considered for the future. Thanks. Okay. So what I can say to this person is, well, even if it was dropped on the road, or something that you see in other places, as given the examples, you know, what we can understand is people don't usually abandon such things on purpose. I mean, especially the money. The owner might not care too much if it is just a dollar, but if it is a large amount, he or she could be so worried and looking for it already, right? So you could practice compassion and look for the owner, to give it back, right? That's the first thing. Alternatively, you could simply think of it as something you didn't earn or something that does not belong to you and walk away, because it's not belong to you unless you can't, give it back to the person. If there are no legal issues concerned, arisen, you can perhaps leave the place without putting your fingers into the thing. If it starts troubling you, or if you start worrying whether the next person will pick it up, you are already clinging to it. Think of it as a problem you didn't have until you saw it and let go. So, I mean, there are a couple of ways to, address such a thing. If somebody dropped, maybe you can give it back to that person. I mean, you have to look at the circumstance and situation and then work on it. That don't try to own it just because somebody dropped. I know I have seen people, when somebody dropped a coin, loony or whatever, the other person just, picks it. Even the person who dropped it intentionally turned back and asked, did you see a coin? I didn't see, or something. This is the usual answer. So if somebody dropped, without his or her notice, you should be able to give it back to that person. Otherwise, you are breaking the second precept. Okay. Does the second precept only apply to theft? Can stealing happen in the form of people who already have committed relationships? Oh, this is an interesting question. So, in order to answer this question, I would need to talk about different kinds of stealing. Okay. The first type of stealing is the most blatant, involving threats of force, are daylight robbery. You can see some, robbers do, right? Daylight robberies, extortion, purse snatching, and kidnapping. This happens. Pickpocketing. This is kind of a blatant, involving threats kind of a stealing. We can see in some places, right? This is one kind of stealing. The second kind of stealing is stealing or secretly taking the item without the owner's knowledge, such as housebreaking, burglary, or pickpocketing. Now, I mean, purse snatching is done, blatantly in giving some threats, but the second type of one is done secretly, without the knowledge of the owner. Housebreaking, burglary, and pickpocketing, the second type of stealing. The third type of stealing is fraud, laying false claims, or cheating by confidence. You mean tricksters gain someone's possessions, kind of fraud, swindling, deceiving other people, right? The fourth type of stealing is deceit, when dishonest traders cheat their customers by false weights, measures, or supply products of lower quality than specified. This can happen too in the consumer industry, because now everything is commercialized. Because when everything is commercialized, there is a chance. There can be plenty of chances for traders people who sell stuff can be cheating the customers, people who are buying on items. Another kind of stealing is forgery, when people pass counterfeit money as real or sell counterfeit gold and jewelry. Now, this can happen, money laundering, and, the money that is not, going through proper channels. So this is the fifth kind of stealing. The last kind of stealing is those seemingly slight, is very common and occurs when employees take small items from their company for their own use without paying for it. This can happen. Some people who work for the companies, they take what they can take without the notice of the company. So all in all, what we can understand is none of these ways are accepted in terms of not stealing, adinadana. So we have to be very careful to keep away from all these stealing types, right? The first one is most blatant involving threats kind of stealing. Second is secretly taking an article without the notice of the owner. Third is fraud. The fourth is deceit. The fifth is forgery. The last is this is very commonplace that can happen in a company and office. So now what happens is, if you keep stealing in any of these forms, what will happen is that it could be a asevana pache, a condition of repetition. So if you get attached, if you get used to one of the ways of stealing here, then you will keep doing that. That's why it's very dangerous. Another question: is a starving person justified in stealing food? He or she explains a little bit more. In Germany, it is not illegal to steal food when you are about to starve. Would someone who does this still would have to face negative consequences because of the stealing in the future? I'm not talking about Germany and their culture. But what I can talk about is, we have to take a look at all these people, the people who are homeless. There should be more, humanitarian programs should be started to these people. So that's what we could see. Other than that, we can say that a homeless person to steal food is a good thing. So we should be able to do something for them. So that's what I can, rather than justifying what they do, if that happens. Okay, what is that? Is it possible to steal accidentally? It can happen. Now, if you see kids when they are 3 or 4 years old, they steal. They don't know that it is a form of stealing. But when they are 5, 6, they understand this is not belong to me. In the same way, when adults, going through different situations, they might steal accidentally without intention to. I mean, that's why I was trying to tell you about different channels of stealing. Different ways of stealing, not even the physical things, but also stealing someone's time, stealing what you call, different things, even by ways of mentality, right? So they all are taken as stealing. So we have to be very careful. So stealing can happen even accidentally as well. What is plagiarism? Is it the stealing of academic material? Yes. So now we know, if you are an academic person, you can't steal other people's articles, books. So you have to be pretty, creative to write your own, right? It's a stealing in the academia. What happens when stealing becomes a habit? Yes. When you say someone is good or someone is bad, it is through the habits that we can say that. So the problem lies with the habit. So if you think you have a bad habit of stealing, you have to work on that habit. You have to transform that habit into generosity. if in the past, if you got used to stealing, then you can think about, I want to give something to other people, not continue my old past habits like stealing. So you can transform your habit into the opposite of stealing, generosity. Why do we get a thought of stealing? An interesting question. There are multiple reasons. One is we are not mindful. This is the first thing. Number two is that you may be jealous. Maybe you may have a lot of greed. You want to hoard. You want to get whatever you want, right? So there are multiple reasons involved. So I would say, in short, it could be the lack of mindfulness. It could be the level of your needs. Sorry, the level of your wants. Because if we only stop at needs, that would be better than going for wants. The third thing is you have no compassion towards other people. I mean, this is a big question at all times, right? If you are compassionate, you will never do anything, right? Any breaking of the precepts. So there are multiple reasons involved with the thought of stealing. So what we could do is the next question is related to that: how to stay free from thoughts of stealing. Yes, you can practice compassion. If you can start your practice with compassion, that's the best thing to do, because compassion will take you to think about, consider other people. You are not trying to steal. Also, you need to be mindful with compassion, because mindfulness is the supervisor for your compassion. At the same time, you are trying to be more generous about what you have towards other people. So compassion, mindfulness, and generosity, the opposite of the what you call adinadana. Before I jump into other few questions, let me ask you, if you have any questions about the second precept, please post your questions here so I can answer those questions. So let me see if somebody posted a question already. I can see any questions. So let me go back to the question that I skipped in the first part. Now, there is a small thing that a lot of people concern in the Sutta Pitaka. There's a sutta called Maha Choranga Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 8.84. Now, in this sutta, Buddha talks about a master thief. Now, a lot of people they don't see a spiritual counterpart to this thing, so they are kind of questioning about the Buddha. Why Buddha only talks about a good thief, a master thief? Why there is no spiritual counterpart to this sutta? Let me read for you. The Buddha teaches how to be a successful master thief. Unusually, this sutta has no spiritual counterpart. So it sounds like the Buddha just giving a lesson in thievery. So I want to say that what we can see in the sutta is a comparison between two thieves, monks. A master thief with 8 factors is soon executed and does not have long to live. What 8? He attacks unprovoked. He steals everything without exception. He kills a woman. He rapes a girl. He robs a monk. He robs the royal treasury. He works close to home. He is not skilled at hiding his booty. A master thief with these 8 factors is soon executed and doesn't have long to live. So now this thing will make us so much puzzle about the kind of the tone and the thing that Buddha talks about. Why the Buddha is saying that there is a way that should be used to execute a thief. On the other hand, A master thief with 8 factors is not soon executed. So there are 2 thieves. This is the second one, and lives long. What 8? He does not attack unprovoked. He doesn't steal everything without exception. He doesn't kill a woman. He doesn't rape a girl. He doesn't rob a monk. He doesn't rob the royal treasury. He doesn't work close to home. He is skilled at hiding his booty. A master thief with his 8 factors is not soon executed and lives long. So this is kind of a very debatable sutta. Why Buddha talks about 2 kind of thief, right? So it looks to me that Buddha was trying to look at the relative harm a thief can do to a village, a country. But anyways, stealing is still regarded as a bad thing. Okay, what is the best way of keeping the second precept? This is the question that we're going to be talking in little detail. So in order to talk this question, I'm going to use a sutta called Veludwari Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 55.7. Veludwara Sutta. In this sutta, Buddha says thus: again, householders, a noble disciple reflects thus: if someone were to take from me what I haven't given, that is to commit theft. So this is what we've been talking about. So we are not supposed to take what's not given to us. Now, if I were to take from another what he hasn't given, that is to commit theft. That would not be pleasing and agreeable to the other either. So if someone is going to steal, that is not bringing comfort to the other person, because she's stealing other person's stuff. What is displeasing and disagreeable to me is displeasing and disagreeable to the other two. So we are looking at the feeling, the emotions, the mentality, of the other person who might be victimized if you're gonna steal, right? Now this happens. This happens to many. I mean, people who steal never think about what if somebody is stealing my stuff the same way, just as I'm gonna do to the other person. So we will never do that thing. How can I inflict upon another what is displeasing and disagreeable to me, right? So the same thing I brought up. Having reflected thus, he himself abstains from taking what's not given, advises others to abstain from taking what's not given, and speaks in praise of abstinence from taking what's not given. Thus, this bodily conduct of his is purified in 3 respects. So, if you want to practice the second precept really well in its high regard, you have to practice it in 3 ways. Number 1, you have to keep away from stealing. You should not take what's not given. Number 2, you should help other people not to take what's not given. You should help them. You may perhaps give an advice. You may perhaps influence them. Number 3, you need to talk the importance of not stealing. You need to talk about the significance of not stealing. So that is how you're going to practice the second precept. Not even the second precept. All the precepts must be fulfilled with 3 aspects. You are first abstaining, refraining from that bad thing, and then you are making other people, if possible, I mean, you don't need to take any risk. You should not put yourself at a risk. If you can, you're gonna make other people refrain from that particular bad thing which you are doing too. Thirdly, you are talking, you are spreading the word, you are vocal about, you are speaking up, you are vocal about the importance of that particular precept. I mean, the good part of the good side of the precept. Okay. Few years back, I got an email from someone when I was in Vancouver. The question he was asking was, when he went to library, library has free computers for people who want to use, right? So he was asking me, his eyes naturally go to the other person's screen, because they are sitting next to each other, right? And then because my eyes go to the other person's screen naturally, I perhaps see what is on the screen. So if what do you think about it? If it is a form of stealing, I said, what do you want to look at other people's screen? So we should never look at other people's screens without without understanding what's going on, right? Now, it's not a good thing, right? Because you are invading someone's privacy. It is also a form of stealing, right? There are times that a lot of people, they invade other people's privacy, right? So we have to respect other people. So the part called respect is also a element or a big part of the stealing. Okay. Okay, let me go back to this second part of the question I did not answer properly. Can stealing happen in the form of people who already have committed relationships? So if you are a person who is committed to someone, you probably have to think about, because if you are committed and you are trying to like someone, it can be a form of stealing too. But it depends on whether you fulfill the 5 elements of adinadana precept. Like if the person that you are trying to be with has an owner, if you understand, if you perceive that the person is belong to someone, and if you have intentions to steal that person from the other person, and if you make efforts to bring that person from that connection relationship, and you take that person to your side. So if these 5 elements happen in a kind of a clandestine or kind of a relationship, then that means you are breaking the second precept without any doubts. Okay, why do some Buddhist teachers prefer to talk about practicing generosity with the second precept? Let me talk about it until I get any more questions from the comments here. Okay, so we always talk about the negative side of the precept. Yes, stealing, taking what's not given. Why don't we talk about the good side of the opposite side of adinadana, which means dinadai, right? So let's practice generosity at all times. So how can we practice generosity at all times? You can think about, what can I give to the other person? How can I be helpful to the other person? You can be kind. Kindness is also a form of generosity. When you smile with someone with a generous, honest, way, it is also a generosity. And material things are, of course, forms of generosity. When you share your Dhamma knowledge, when you share your knowledge, it is also a form of generosity. When you take part in a kind of take part in a voluntary activity, it is also a way of generosity, because you are dedicating your time and everything, especially time, to somebody, right? So there are many ways of being generous, not just going to a temple and offer food and say, I'm generous. You have to think about different avenues of how you can be generous. So it is always good to find opportunities to be generous rather than saying, okay, this is the best way to be generous. There are people who do like that. This is the best way to be generous. I just go to a place that I know and I offer something. No, you can keep doing that, continue doing it, but you have to look for more opportunities of being generous. It could be anything that you can be generous act. So a good person, a generous person, always looks at different opportunities. So they always find opportunities to be generous rather than not finding opportunities and only singling out or isolating one's ability of generosity towards 1%, 2%. So we should more talk about uh, generosity more than not stealing, because if you uh, if you only talk about not stealing, you might not perhaps understand what to do. And there are people who steal and donate. That is not good. That is pretty bad. You can't steal, because Buddha says in order for you to be generous, you have to earn money, everything, in righteous, good ways. Right? If you are not doing that, that means your dana, your generosity does not bear fruit, because the money you use or the things you use, they were earned by you in bad ways. Once again, I wanted to mention to you, literal fulfillment of precepts uh, is the thing that a lot of people think about. They are fulfilling the precept literally only. So don't just look at the literal fulfillment of precept, just go beyond the fulfillment of precept, because now, unless you don't look at different avenues, ways of stealing, you know in particular for today's talk, you will never understand how to fulfill, how to practice generosity, the opposite side of not stealing. Even the example that I gave to you about, you can steal someone's time. You promise that you would come at this time, but you would not be showing up, right? So what you do is that you are taking that person's time. You are stealing that person's time. That person can't do anything for that time, right? So that's something to think about. And another thing that I wanted to say is that manipulations. When you manipulate, you are stealing someone's energy, right? Now, that's also bad, because when you have power, maybe in a family, maybe in a company, when you manipulate, you are sort of like stealing someone's energy, because those people could have used that for something else. So you have to think wider, not just the literal thing. I'm not taking somebody else's thing, so I'm not breaking the second precept. So you have to go beyond that perspective so that you can understand properly what you should do. So, Dhamma folks, I don't see any questions in the comment section. So I would say there are 5 things that should be complete in order for you to break the second precept. Let me read them back to you. The object has an owner. Number 1, you perceive that the object has an owner, because the first one is the object has an owner, but you don't perceive. At the second level, you perceive that the object has an owner. You intend to steal it. You make effort to steal it. You succeed in stealing. So when you complete these 5, you are breaking the second precept. If you are not fulfilling these 5, we can say you are breaking the second precept. But still, if you go to different levels of these 5 elements, you will get certain kammas, but not the full adinadana. And there were different other aspects of stealing we talked today. Please pay your attention to those events as well. And we also said practice generosity. And the perfect practicing of the not stealing precept, second precept, is you first refrain from stealing, and you are helping other people to refrain from stealing, and you are speaking good about not stealing. That is how you're going to practice second precept really well. Okay, that's it. And let's share all the good karmas with the departed relatives and the devas and nagas. May all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways be shared by all the departed relatives and the deities who protect all of us. Especially may all the departed relatives who passed away in the name of all of us be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idam me ñāti nang hotu, sukhita huntu ñāteyo. Idam me ñāti nang hotu, sukhita huntu ñāteyo. Idam me ñāti nang hotu, sukhita huntu ñāteyo. May all the good karmas we been accumulating also be shared by all the deities and nagas, devas and nagas. May they protect all of us for good health, prosperity, and all the good things. May all the deities and nagas, devas and nagas be happy and peaceful. May they also attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ittavata cha ammihi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya akasattha cha bhummattha devanaga mahintika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu lokasasanang chirang rakkhantu desanang chirang rakkhantu mang paranti. Finally, let's make a great wish. May all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways be helpful for all of us to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm going to be blessing you with a couple more stanzas. Please receive the blessings. Abhivadana silis nichang vaddha prachayino chattaro dhamma vadanti ayuvanno sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha atho nibbana sampatti iminati saminchatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Folks, I have some announcements to make. So next Monday, we're going to be discussing the third precept. It's going to be a Q&A about this third precept, Kamisamichachara. I would call it not misbehaving. Let's look at different, avenues, different ways someone can break this precept. At the same time, I want to share with you that there will be a couple more interviews coming up soon. So please stay tuned with those interviews too. Okay, so thank you. Have a good night. Have a good day. Take care. Please continue to take care of yourself.